In the back is Peter Lorange. He's sitting there. He will leave a bit earlier. He told me just now, not because he will be angry at me, but he said, Peter Lorange is for me a sort of next Peter Drucker. I'll just tell you what I think. As next Peter Drucker, you might know Peter Drucker. And I remember him 15 years ago, wasn't a CEO at that point in time, and then he said that he was looking from IMD standpoint, not for the money creating clients, because that's obvious and they did all the time, so he didn't have to do that, but to those clients that had those complex assignments, difficult clients. And these difficult clients, they don't create much money, but they do create much value. And that was for me the first time that I got this division between money and value. We all know that value and money can sometimes be the same, but quite often they're not. Sometimes something is very valuable, my daughter is, but I sure wouldn't account for her in money terms. That's quite obvious, isn't it? It might well even be true that what is most valuable to us, we don't like to talk even in money terms about. So I like to think about all these sorts of things. This will be a stand-up lecture. So you have to help me out. There's no text. But text will pop out. It will emerge. My thesis is that we live in an emergent world, full of coincidental things. We'd like to design that world, but it is designed by all of us, and the result amazes us all the time. We're making something which we don't totally understand, luckily, because maybe that's why we're alive. Now I'm going to tell you 3 little stories, and then there will be an assignment, and I want you to prepare for that assignment so you know. I will ask you this question, which is quite relevant. The question will be, this is the title, Are You Connected? I think it sounds nice, Are You Connected? And then leadership, to make it more relevant. Leadership, otherwise it would be poetic. So I make it prosaic. And say leadership in networked environments. Now the question put to you, and you have to work on that in twos, not with someone you know, but somebody you don't know yet, and connect. And talk about what will this lecture be about. So I cannot tell that lecture before that question, because that question's only relevant before I give you the lecture, of course. So the question is, what will this lecture be about? I got 3 stories just to take your mind away from the assignment, because it feels a bit tense probably. But look around with whom you would like to talk. It could be an opportunity too. So the first thing is, I'll tell you some irrelevant things, quite personal. My father died when he was 52. That's true. My mother died when she was 62. True. I died when I was 52. Only a minute. My heart stood still. I was taken aback. You know, with these electoral things, you don't feel a thing. For those who have to have the experience yet to come, you don't feel a thing. And I came back. And it took me 4 years to leave that chief emotional officer position. And here I am. I call myself actively retired. Actively retired. I live in Amsterdam and in the south of France, and trying to become a truly European. I like to read about my country, of course, in a French newspaper. Because I get to know my country better if I read Le Figaro or Le Monde, and then I see that we are accounted for as belonging to the 3 strongest nations in Europe. You don't hear that when you're inside of Holland. You hear that when you're outside in France. That's why we need each other, to get know ourselves better. We would not be able to know ourselves without others. Maybe that's the reason we will connect. Lithuania, Norway. And real dear friends, geography doesn't matter much anymore. The nation state is dying, as we all know. But there are more and more Norwegians. There are more and more Lithuanians. And there are more and more, not in Norway, and not in Lithuania. So maybe it's nice to talk about Norway and Lithuania and Holland, not in the geographical sense, which is a bit old stuff, but in the cultural sense, that we create diversity and new combinations, which of course is another word for entrepreneurship, creating new combinations, as Schumpeter said, destroying others, which he called creative destruction. So let's talk about that. I was 52 when I died. I came back, and I still remember, of course, that point in time that I saw these three guys. There were three guys with these large black pupils in their eyes, saying to me that nothing was to worry about. You know, they were just like that. And of course, I did worry a little bit, because they said it so fiercely that I thought, my God, what has happened? And then they told me, I asked them, when I heard what happened, I said, how long was I without oxygen? I'm a knowledge worker. So how long was I? That's a very relevant question for a knowledge worker. How long was I without oxygen? And then the man said, dear Mr. Starren, if you can put a question coherently, there's not much to fear about. So here I am, the lucky bastard. Did you think that I was thinking about myself when I returned? No, of course not. It's like in the Twin Towers. Did anyone there said, with the Twin Towers, send the invoices out? Or get the car to the garage? Or put the mortgage on a lower basis? Or get the best interest rate? They all said, don't think about me, they said in the Twin Tower. They didn't. Tell her I love her. Tell my children I love her. So probably we're talking about connectedness, not in the usual way, I hope. Am I back in church? That something comes back in my mind. Shouldn't love be talked about in church and not in business? Why is that? Can anyone tell me why the subject isn't referred to? In all our songs, nothing takes us more than just that point. I suggest later on that we should sing to do some relevant stuff. And sing some songs, don't we? So that's the first line. The second story is, of course, relevance is irrelevant if you want to innovate. Innovation is about irrelevance. And then making the irrelevant relevant, which is another word for true learning. Children can learn perfectly, but we get learned. We get schooled. And some of us can't be irrelevant anymore. Not able to innovate. Because irrelevance is the starting point of innovation. Facebook was totally irrelevant. Really, it was totally irrelevant. So it starts off being irrelevant. So leadership might well be about not management. Management is about relevance all the time. Is this relevant? Management is about saying no or postponing it and say, could you put this on paper and make this into a suggestion, which means it's not a no yet. Leadership is about saying yes to things that might not matter yet. So it's about irrelevance and having a perspective on irrelevance. I hope that I'm able to become more irrelevant. Some of you are a bit annoyed. Where is this man heading for? Well, that's my point. If this becomes too relevant, it might be of value for what you know, but not for what you didn't. Now, most of it, adult learning, is about getting the same message again and again. That's why we read the same newspaper, because we want to have the same information. What do we call a smart guy? Someone who thinks like me. That's been researched. If his mindset is like mine, then I call him a very interesting, smart guy. My father didn't have education, blue-collar worker, and he taught me by being alive that education and wisdom aren't the same thing, that you can be smart without education. And that with education you can be, of course. Of course. Education is a nice thing, but it can keep us from seeing new things. Now look at the situation here. That neurologist that I have had a talk with, of course you get for those who have the experience yet to come, you get a free conversation with a neurologist after you're being dead. And he said to me, Mr. Starren, you're all right, which I thought was a nice message, so I took it for granted and say, okay, what shall we talk about? I mean, it was paid for. And I said, can you tell me a little bit about learning? Because I was in the business and I take every opportunity to get my things for free. That's why I like to connect with the cab driver, with someone outside. How do you know all these things? To connect. By connecting, of course. It's a form of laziness too, but I'll tell you later on. So I said, how do people learn? I asked this neurologist. And he was a real scientist, so he gave the real truthful answer for a scientist. He said, I don't know. Exactly. But we do know how you don't learn. That's Popper, of course, falsification. He says, we know 4 ways. That's why I'm telling you, I have to tell this, Othnius. I like to be here, you know, it's a compliment in a certain sense, but I'm going to be rude. 4 ways to hinder learning. He said to me, you can hinder learning by taking daylight away. That hinders learning. Now look around. Taking real daylight away. And then he said to me, the next thing you could do to hinder learning is to take away fresh oxygen. Get that away. Then he says, talk to people for more than 15 minutes at a stretch. Look at us. And then he said to me, the 4th way of hindering learning is to make people, get them in the least learnsome physical position human beings can have. Make them sit down. That hinders learning a lot. Sitting down is the most hindrance you can create for learning. That's what we do for our children, don't we? If we say, nice class, peaceful, quiet. My boy got a report, 7 years old. Bus can sit still for more and more time at a stretch. It was meant to be a compliment. This is a taming situation. We are created quietness. Some even take a tie just to block any thinking at all. So this is who we are. We do stupid things, we have assumptions, habits, and we do them anyway. This is a training for an office. You're here at a training for an office. But there are no offices anymore, my dear friends. If you work at an office, you don't have a nice job, do you? If you have to go to an office, you know enough. If you're a knowledge worker, you stay away out of the office as often as possible. You want to create, don't you? You don't do. If you go to the new office, it's to meet people, enjoy, and we call it a lounge. That's why most new offices look a lot like home, with more spending power, obviously. In the new offices, we meet and greet because work can be done overall. But we can only do it because we're connected. We can work together and we don't need physical environments like the factory in older days. My father worked in a factory. He got managers that motivate him. You know this? They took every life out of him and then they started to motivate him. And now you want inspiration, don't you? We're having the metaphor of the artist. And the artist is a creating animal. We want to master our lives and make a work of art out of this. You'd better. At least that's what I decided when I started to become actively retired. And the strategy I like to share is saying yes to causes that matter and people who care. That's all. That's my strategy. Do I connect? Do I connect? There was a writer, last little story, and then the assignment there was a writer coming to my hometown. 37 years ago, I was 20. And when I was 20, it must have been 37 years ago. And this man came, wrote a book, talked about this book. We had a coffee break, we returned, there was a Q&A, I still remember that. And in the front row there was an older woman. She was at least 40 years old. I still remember that. Facts. I thought, oh, we'll never like older women, but God has been good to me. And the thing is, she was standing up and said, what do you really mean with, to this writer, literature? And he said, that's a weird misunderstanding. You seem to think that it's my book, but it's yours, you read it. So I'm very curious to the answer of that question. People started laughing except for her. And then he said, and now we're thinking, aren't we? The book is been created by the reader. I only wrote one. There are more books than being printed, less than being sold. People thought that this was not very relevant as an answer, but it is. You create the school you go to, the family you live in. My sister had parents that were happily married. I didn't. Can you please explain? Connection is about creating identity and being who you are. And we have the world as a stage, to quote the Bard. Now here's your assignment. What will this lecture be about? How long will this take, this exercise? Good question, how long will this take? Up till the moment you start enjoying it. Then we reconvene. But stay here, turn around. What will this lecture be about? Are you connected? Leadership in networked environments. You know. So here you go. Some of you don't like this, but you have to do it anyway. So connect. Find someone to talk about. Are you connected? Leadership in networked environments. What is this lecture about? We're having a nice time. Thank you very much. You can go now, somebody said to me. You can go now. This is what connectedness, of course, is about. This is what we can do the whole world around. Get into conversations, connect. But the real quality is, can you put questions? The real thing is, if you want to be knowledgeable on the net, it's not about answers. It is about questions that bring out the best in other people, and people like to answer questions because we're valued by questions. As a human being, as someone of value, a question means you're worthwhile. If somebody doesn't question you, are you worthwhile? So the best thing, if people connect, and I'm talking autobiographical, so I might be lying. And the thing is, when you meet a woman, what will be the best thing? I'll tell it differently. I asked a woman, can he listen very well? That's a nice question put to women about their husbands. Can he listen? And then I still remember a woman telling me, yes, he can. Yes, he can. Because he could. And so I know he can. Because 20 years ago, he would listen to everything I said. And when I said, aren't I boring you? Said, no, please go on. I like what you're saying. Because we know how to connect, don't we? Casanova wasn't a great talker. Casanova was a great listener. We all know this, don't we? And what do people say after those 10 minutes? It is as if I know you for a long time. So in 10 minutes time, we think we already met the other person because she or he is another human being just like me. I feel so connected. I haven't had this with someone else in years. That's autobiographical, by the way. We all know this. So it's a question of listening, actively listening, putting questions. Now let me tell you a little story. No, I'll tell first a story about, may I use you? Because you were looking at me and saying, I'm not interacting because I can't hear very well. So it's not, I don't want to offend you. And now the thing came up in my mind, this is stand-up. I was at a spiritual academy with only women leading that. It was a very nice place. And for obvious reasons. It was well taken care of. No, it was well taken care of, and a lot of things that you like to miss in all these organizations, corporations, etc. They're more masculine. So you see the difference at that academy. It's worthwhile to go there. And there's a little sound every hour at odd moments. A little tingling. And that means 1 minute of silence, whatever they do. Now the first reaction from me coming from business is, oh, this takes away the speed in all processes. Huh? This is not very efficient. Well, it is very efficient, but more importantly, it's very effective. Whenever that noise comes, that little sound, it's not noise, music, they stop for a minute. Not because somebody died, because we're alive. And after that minute, you think that conversations become more superficial or deeper? What do you think? Do you think better about what you're going to say after a minute?
Could be.
Could be. That maybe taking speed out of processes creates speed in those processes. If we're in complex situations, we start to talk. And somebody would say, could we be silent for a minute? And that the first one that speaks maybe says something of real importance. Could that be? I think it could. So let's continue. Where were we? What should this be about? Can I hear? What is the associations that you have? About, are you connected? What came in that conversation? What do you think? Maybe it's nice to say what somebody else told you that you think is worthwhile to share. That's a nice. What did somebody tell you that you think everybody should know this? Would it help if I go away?
Maybe I should tell, because
yeah.
I feel
yeah.
that we have
Oh,
to
very.
be connected.
Yeah.
So not long time ago it was a conference. You told about yourself that you have a position, but it was said that also is a chief happiness officer.
Yeah.
So I think those two specialties now coming to the society.
Okay.
Very important.
Yeah. So that we don't make this division anymore that brought to us by the industrial age, that you are happy at home and awful at work. And so maybe it's with knowledge workers, creative knowledge workers, maybe happiness and hard working are almost the same. And that playfulness is the best way to create new initiatives. And that we think is you got to sweat to work is maybe you can't say to somebody, think smarter and push them. You only can create environments like gardeners where that emerges. So you have to be modest in what you do and hope for the best because they're like you. Anyone else? So happiness might be in a more center stage than in the industrial age towards connectiveness. And private and public becomes maybe the same. Anyone else? Popping up.
Harmony.
Harmony. Yeah? You smile very serenely now. Huh? Harmony. What's the, yeah, please, I'll connect with that.
Yeah, it's if you get if you want to connect people,
Yeah.
to offer them something, you have to tell them something, then
Yeah.
you get something back.
Yeah.
And I think many of the people think that it's so much secret in the world,
Yeah.
but it's no secret.
It's obvious, huh?
But if you tell something, some idea,
Can we all hear you? Otherwise stand up if you please. Yeah. Then we hear you.
if you have a great idea,
Yeah.
you can tell it to everybody.
Yeah.
Because someone have thought this idea before.
Yeah.
But the difficult thing is to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Having bright thoughts, everybody has bright thoughts, but to execute them, all strategies fail in execution, not in bright ideas. We almost have the same. I'm a consultant. Man, they think the same bright ideas all the time. Because more entrepreneuring, more client-oriented, I can give you, but the whole thing is execution. We need other people to execute. And maybe a giving mentality. I'm doing these lunches in Holland with 10 people, invite them, And then with a theme, for 1.5 hour, a good conversation, that's the promise, with 10 interesting people. They don't know each other, and we sit at the table having symposium, as it was meant. And they always ask the same thing. Why is it for free? And they say, there must be something behind this, because you're giving it away. But I'm not giving anything away. Where can you find 10 bright, interesting people talking with you and each other on a subject for 150 euros? Who is dumb? Who is smart? Who is giving? Who is taking? We need a new kind of logic, maybe. The new logic of that connectiveness isn't throwing away the old logic. I thought you were leaving. I was waving goodbye, but you're coming towards me. There are 3 logics I would suggest. The first logic is the simple linear logic that was taught to us on primary school. You have cause, you have effect. You have answer, you have question, you have answer. You have problem, you have solution. This is simple thinking. It brings us far away, as we are here today. Then we get multiple logic, which is academic reasoning. We're all academics, one way or another. That means that you see a consequence and you know almost certainly there are multiple causes. Even the Nile has more sources than one. But we were looking for the source. That's multiple causality. And one cause can have multiple consequences. That's the academic logic. And that gives us more insight. It makes the world more complicated, but it gives us much insight. It's always paradoxical. And then there is the logic that life itself tells us, teaches us. And that's circular logic. That was not allowed with that linear logic. But you find out that cause can be effect. Effect can be a cause. If you decide to like this lecture, if it is a lecture, then I will probably perform better. Some people know this. So I see some people actively nodding and smiling. That's the way they create great service. I know a guy that gets good service all the time, gets his beer earlier than other people. We tend to think we divide in that old linear and complex knowledge, supply and demand. I had this lecture a little bit about with economists, and some went away when I started this. And so I want to ask the economist, do whatever you like. And this is the storyline. Supply and demand are constructions of the mind. They're typically industrial. Now here's that television producer. And he makes a television program in the Netherlands. And it's a huge success, so he exports it to Germany. And there they do the same program, same sort of candidates, it's a game show, same presenter, her German as good as her Dutch, same hour, same, how do you call that, plot, everything the same. Not a success. So in the Netherlands it was a huge success, in Germany not. And then this great guy that didn't go to university, he thought on his own, he said, then the audience is to blame. Can you imagine? The client. Blame the client. That's the new taboo. So please look at that. So he said, the clients. Then he took them to the Netherlands, and there I saw them. I was sitting having coffee, and a busload of Germans coming out of the bus in Hilversum. Well, you get a bit afraid. And yeah, when they come in such a mass, then so they came out of the bus, and I asked the lady who was a natural speaker, what is that? Question. She looked at that busload of Germans, said, that? Germans. That's great storytelling. So I said, Germans? That's what you get taught at business school. Germans? And then she said, yeah, Germans coming from Germany. That's storytelling. So I said, but why? You need why. She said, well, he found out, this storyline, that the audience wasn't participating and creating the show that is made as well by the audience as it is by the speaker. So we know great audiences, great student creates great school. So I was at the Baak, Chief Emotional Officer. This will be my roundup just for time reasons, but if you want me to go on, please say so. It's for free. There was this guy, I asked this guy, how was your holiday? That's part of my job as a CEO. How was your holiday? And he said, awful. He always has awful holidays. He's very competent in that. No, really, he's experienced and he can't do it. It's becoming a habit, as we all get habits. So he has this habit of having awful holidays. I know this, but I said, who was you? He said, where do you go? He said, Turkey. Listen this way, Turkey. I went with an airplane from Eindhoven, which is a small town. Didn't know that you could fly. You have to fly. It's a long way, long haul, 4 hours. Then you come in the country, it's warm, hot. Then you come out of the airplane, you go into a bus for 1.5 hours to a place you cannot pronounce, and never had a decent meal. Nobody speaks the language. Just a little story to tell it and explain it. I came into the room. Stars don't mean a thing. I got this tab for water. Water came from the other tab. Went on the whole week. Now I went to another guy that always has a great holiday. How was your holiday? He is very competent in having great holidays. So where do you go? Turkey. Didn't know that you could fly. You have to go to a small village. Then you go into the plane, fully crowded for that price. And then you fly a long haul. Then you come in the country, warm, hot. Then you get in the car. 1.5 hours, you can't pronounce the name of the village. Nobody speaks the language, so you can touch them. Never ate anything else, always other things. And just to tell you the story of Turkey, I went into the room, picked that tab, water came from the other side, went on the whole week. This is another experience, isn't it? The mindset in which we connect creates the friends we meet and the enjoyment we have. In business, we took away so much of that to be more efficient, more effective, that we have to go to places called business schools to find time again to reflect. Isn't that weird? Isn't that strange that the conversations we could have had are now taken away by efficiency and we have to buy for good money time back? That was our time, the time of our life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And of course, some questions for Harry.
Yeah, I'd like to know what this was about. That was my...
I'd like to know
Yeah.
what happened with these Germans in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Well, now, I can tell you this. They were trained to experience and be part of that program. They went back, and having 20% of people that were educated in these programs created a fun program, and in the ranking that program went up. And the only thing he did was not thinking in division of supply and demand, but thinking in a circle, or otherwise we would call that a community. We are divided by supply and demand, and that's good for products. But in services, the service provider and the consumer produce too. And you see that some of us provide great service. A guy that I know phoned the telephone company for free information. You could only have 2 numbers. He could get 8 numbers, including hers. The guy knew what it was to be a great consumer, a client actively co-creating the world he is in. And we all know this. Some of us get better service than other people. And some of us never ever get good service anywhere. We all know them. No, we don't know them. Of course we don't know them. So that went, so you make it into a circle. Thinking in a circle, that's my point.
More questions? Just raise your hand.
What was it about for you? Because I stopped right at 1 o'clock. I mean, I'm a good boy. But where was it about? What was it about for you, this? Be naughty. Say things that are not You don't have to be nice. Anyone, what was this about for you? Tell me your name, please.
Paul,
Paul, what was this about?
common sense is an illusion.
Common sense is an illusion. Nice. Yeah, can I use it on my site? Common sense is an, but it's an illusion. Eh? Our reality is created by us mostly. I still remember coming into a pub and there was a party and I faked that I didn't know, you know, that they had a party and I just came in and thought, oh, sorry, is there a party? That sort of thing, that behavior. And they said, no, join us, you're a client, you can join. And I was sitting opposite to a lady. And we were having eye contact. You know what eye contact is? That you touch each other's eyes. Not in the same rhythm, because that would be stalking, but, you know. And we were, so I thought, great party, nice lady, look at eye contact. And then she smiled even more, and then she came to me, so like this. So, in normal behavior, this is what we do. I connected. And then she said, would you like to dance with my mother? We are masters of reality, but up to a point. I mean, this is not a conversation about all reality is created and it's all in the mind. I mean, I'm not from that school, but I'm a bit postmodernistic, I have to admit that. Anyone maybe, if there's time allows. I like to do this, of course.
We can probably hear you even more.
Yeah? Anyone? Last question maybe, or last association? Yeah, please.
I just like also very much what you talked about, taking a pause, taking 1 minute, slow down, and then be creative, and then start the speed again, which I think is a very important thing in working life, in studying.
Yeah.
And everything.
Silence.
Silence, and you create a space for yourself,
Yeah.
which you need.
We had this in the back, we still have it, and it's very hard to get them that way, but then we bring people to Colabassa, which is by Ventimiglia. You have mountains over there, and then one of the practices is to go up to a mountain, find a spot, and stay there for 24 hours. You create your bed, and then nothing else than just that. And most business managers find all sorts of reasons that they won't do that. There's nothing in it. Why should I? I can use my time better. What is happening? Can you please tell me what will happen? We can't. Nobody can. And they all come back, most all come back to find out they have never been alone for that period of time. They have never had the thoughts they had in that space of time. Some of them resign. Some of them change their lives dramatically. Some of them find out they're on the right spot. And some of them truly say, I've never been more afraid than the first 6 hours of being alone. And that's not a minute. It's very hard.
I would say it's a bit of a danger to send a lot of managing directors or CEO to that kind of places, because your part of the economy could be ruined, because most of them could retire and then change their life instead of the this out.
Yeah, that's a nice story. This is the way we should do it, you know, fantasize more. You know, the thing is, I think that if you take 150 CEOs together in a room, maybe this is what business schools is about. Then they take them for 3 days away from the work, and then the work finally gets done over there. I mean, the whole thing is get them. You know what it means? MBA, Master in Blind Ambition, and we've seen the result. Thank you very much.